So, our next speaker is William P. Marriott. Bill Marriott is the Aviation Missile Command at Redstone Army Arsenal, and he's here to give us an update. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, everybody. So I landed the coveted follow the vice who just ran the Boston Marathon and flew in here and gave 2 silver stars slot this morning. But that's okay. Everybody that stays, I can guarantee you'll get Marriott points. I don't know what those will get you, but anyway. Before I get started, I'd like to thank Steve, Janice, Bill, and the entire Quad A team for putting on this incredible summit. I also specifically want to thank all of you, our soldiers, Department of the Army, civilians, friends, family members, coalition, national partners, industry partners, for all that you do every single day to keep our nation safe. In mid-February, due to an underlap in commanding generals, I assumed the position as Executive Director until our next commanding general at AMCOM, Brigadier General Todd Royer, arrives in June. Fortunately for me, this gap included Quad A, which allows me for the first time to attend this great event. At my age, I'm always excited to learn something new, and yesterday during the opening presentations, I learned 3 things I never knew before. I learned about Major General Gaylor's band of stress. I live there every day, so I was glad to have that so I can now put that on my business card. I learned that Quad A's trophies are abnormally large, and I learned that Night Stalkers never quit. When I was asked to speak at the summit, I was happy to oblige. I have a deep respect as a naval aviator for 26 years for Army aviation and our aviators, maintainers, and technicians. Together, along with our industry partners, we made great strides in key aviation performance metrics, including achieving operational readiness rates consistently at or above Army goals. Slide, please. I want to point out up front that while the name at the top of the AMCOM leaderboard has changed, the vision, goals, and guiding principles that Major General Doug Gabram have instituted at AMCOM have not. AMCOM will continue to lead the charge on critical focus areas, such as reducing customer wait time for parts, improving depot performance, increasing aircraft availability of Fort Rucker, providing quality and reliability through airworthiness, support to our war fighters through field maintenance, reducing contracting time, and developing our workforce. This morning, I'd like to discuss some of AMCOM's initiatives to reform, reshape, and refocus to support multi-domain operations, but I'd be negligent if I didn't take some time at least to discuss our more pressing current challenges, those that stand in the way of meeting the needs of the ready force on our way to meeting the requirements of the MDO force. 2 of the areas I hear emphasized and again from General Perna are improving output from industry and holding people accountable. We rely on our contractual relationships with industry to deliver the parts and services our soldiers need to win our nation's wars. But to make the relationships more effective requires a renewed focus on accountability, both government and contractor, to meet our contractual requirements in a timely manner. As an example, we have a contract with a vendor, not part of Quad A, by the way, who we've paid more than $30 million for critical parts. They deliver on time 90% of the time, and that sounds great, and it actually meets the requirement of the contract. But as someone recently told me, if there were 10 steps to making coffee and you only did 9, would you be drinking coffee? So we wouldn't be. So what are we doing about this? We've complained, we've raised our voices, banged the table, but ultimately we've accepted this performance. We simply cannot accept this performance anymore. Going forward, you can expect that AMCOM is going to get much better at communicating what we want in our contracts and we're going to focus much more closely on contractor performance, the requirements of those contracts, holding ourselves and industry accountable as we are held accountable by Army leadership. That means we have to get the contracts right up front and become more innovative, as we have begun to do with our current relationship with DLA, where we will enable rapid acquisition capability by making awards to multiple vendors, allowing quick response to surges in warfighter needs. Incremental growth, developing on-ramps, enabling coverage for items such as cables, connectors, installation kits, and wiring harnesses. And better advanced planning, including sharing annual forecasts with awarded vendors at supply chain reviews, and allowing industry alignment with AMCOM priorities, improved response time, and pricing efficiencies. The speed of war now in MDO timeframes requires that we do everything in our power to minimize supply chain risk to our force, and contract performance is a big risk. While I'm on the topic of supply chain risk, let me take a moment to speak to strategic depth. For the past year, we've focused on achieving strategic depth in our parts. In fact, Major General Gabram spoke about it at the summit last year, and Lieutenant General Richardson spoke about it yesterday morning. We have redefined aviation strategic depth as 6 months on the shelves of our most critical parts, our readiness drivers. To that end, that'll cost us about $84 million to go from 3 months to 6 months, but it's the right thing to do. This is an increase from 3 months, but the reason for the shift is simply the fragility of our supply chain. When I look across our aviation fleets, despite the fact that every MDS today and over recent time, as General Richardson said, has achieved Army goals, I have significant concerns about the aviation supply chain, certainly in terms of current operations, but especially when we consider the requirements needed to conduct multi-domain operations in the future. To mitigate this, we will seek long-term contracts which enable us to shore up our supply posture, achieve strategic depth faster, and ensure the most critical parts are rapidly available at the tactical level. And we will work with FORSCOM and the department to equip our cabs with a common ASL. This effort has been approved by AMC, and we will start this fiscal year. This effort will require increased funding and improved part support for the expected increase in demands, and we're working through that with the department. And just as we are driving commercial output to meet strategic depth needs, we are also driving critical changes to our organic industrial base to achieve optimal capacity and output. Organic industrial base production will always be a delicate balance between quality, speed, accuracy, safety, and output. To meet MDO requirements, we're going to have to improve across the board in all of those areas. Uncertainty, now and in the future, requires that we have the strategic depth in our Class 7 major end items as well as our Class 9 parts. To get there, as we adjust fleet sizes, as we modernize, perhaps we need to consider retaining some of those aircraft as repair cycle floats to fill the gaps in our formations we will most certainly have. This could equate to a huge difference in readiness. This has been a concept that hasn't had a lot of traction in the past for some good reasons, but maybe it's time to reconsider it. When I think of readiness challenges, Fort Rucker is at the top of my list. The capabilities and skills needed to conduct operations to deter potential adversaries in competition and to rapidly defeat enemies in conflict are learned at Fort Rucker. And sustainment of the training fleets has been and will continue to be the foundation to improving the aviator throughput needed now and in the future. AMCOM, through our Aviation Center Logistics Command, is in lockstep with Major General Gaylor and USACE in tackling these readiness concerns. Collectively, led by General Gaylor and General Gabram, the aviation enterprise has taken several steps to improve aircraft availability at Fort Rucker, including increasing their number of Apaches, raising their priority for parts, stationing LARs there, and increasing manpower. Plus, we're working with the department to plus up funding. Brigadier General Todd and PEO Aviation are working to create proximity stock. These efforts are just a few of the many ways we are driving aviation sustainment forward by reshaping, refocusing, and reforming every part of our organization, processes, and capabilities to deliver the best equipment in the world to our soldiers. Our efforts have been and will continue to be hindered by numerous challenges. One I've mentioned already is the fragility of the supply chain. Having foreign nations that are sole source providers for our aircraft parts. Primes who don't have a solid understanding of the limits or capabilities of their subs. Raw materials only available from foreign nations, long acquisition and production lead times, and limited manufacturing capabilities like forgings within the industrial base. These are just some of the issues that we know about and to a certain extent can predict. There are others that we can't, such as hurricanes, hailstorms, cyber attacks, quality escapes, and our funding year to year. All add up to a supply chain that is fragile, vulnerable, and needs to be strengthened. This is the weak link in our drive towards sustaining the force today and in the future. The current level of fragility within our supply chain is unacceptable, and the number one concern I have moving forward. We must fix this for our Army, but it's not something AMCOM can do alone. It will take all Army aviation stakeholders working together to make this happen. These issues are not insignificant and will require a lot of thought and effort to solve, but I'd like to put them aside for a moment to focus on the future. There's a wind of change blowing through the Army. The Vice talked about it. It's called multi-domain operations. As I did some research for this speech, I read an article titled "Looking Ahead" by Colonel Robert Schultz. He cautioned that in this day of rapid technological changes, equipment obsolescence, and doctrinal changes which result in a shift of traditional roles and missions, an attempt to look ahead and predict what the status of a particular function will be for the next 10 years can prove a precarious undertaking. He's not wrong, but precarious or not, I think we all would agree that we must look forward to a future with multi-domain operations as our strategic centerpiece. By the way, in case you were wondering where to read Colonel Schultz's entire article, it was published in the U.S. Army Aviation Digest in May 1959. Next slide, please. Speaking about looking ahead, Winston Churchill once said, "I have no fear of the future. Let us go forward into the mysteries. Let us tear aside the veils which hide it from our eyes, and let us move onward with confidence and courage." With that as the backdrop, I'd like to use my remaining time this morning to discuss AMCOM's future and how we will move onward, adapt, and take on the challenges of sustainment in a multi-domain operation world. In MDO, forces generate combat power through the strategic support area, defined as a space where friendly, strategic, and national forces gain their combat power, project power, and sustain operations into the operational and tactical support areas. Simply said, this is where our Army's military might is generated, and this is where AMC and AMCOM are focused. And we know that a multi-domain war will be defined by an enemy who will challenge our ability to maintain freedom of maneuver and superiority across the air, cyberspace, land, maritime, and space domains, and the electromagnetic spectrum. When our nation calls upon the Army to fight and win its next war, the operational environment we will be in will be unlike the circumstances of our recent experiences. As the Vice said, our adversaries have studied our operations closely over the past 17 years, and they are simultaneously synthesizing and deploying emerging technologies to fight us through multiple layers of standoff in all domains. These challenges are driving us to push our resources and focus to the strategic support area. For those of you who were able to attend AUSA in Huntsville 2 weeks ago, you received some insight from General Perna on his vision for AMC to support within this space. Listed on the top of this chart are the 7 focus areas which will drive outputs across Army Material Command and support of multi-domain operations. If we get these 7 areas right, we will ensure our ability to effectively generate, project, and sustain our forces across all domains. To meet the challenges of sustaining multi-domain operations throughout the strategic support area for aviation and missile systems, AMCOM will reform our business processes, reshape the command, and refocus our investments. Slide, please. This slide represents how we are nested through our core competencies to meet the challenges of multi-domain operations. While it would take significantly more time than I have to discuss each in depth, please let me highlight just a couple areas where we are addressing within the 7 focus areas depicted on the top of the slide. Under installation readiness, General Perna has been very clear. Installations are our platforms for readiness. This is a space where we support rapid mobilization, provide world-class training venues, and sustain operational readiness of current and future weapon systems. It's on our installations where we are driving fleet maintenance, expanded standardization, and reforms. It's there where we are providing aviation field maintenance at logistics readiness centers and reset at our regional aviation sustainment management sites. And it's at the installation level where Colonel Rich Martin is reshaping the Aviation Center Logistics Command support at Fort Rucker to provide ready training fleets. All these efforts provide us predictable, sustainable, world-class maintenance, logistics, and technological support. This is the very core of AMCOM's mission, to ensure our soldiers and units have the right equipment, right material, and the right parts at the right time to achieve their missions. However, right now, we simply cannot deliver the type of responsive and continuous sustainment which multi-domain operations will require. To improve acquisition logistics, sustainment logistics, depot performance, and field maintenance support, we have reshaped the AMCOM Logistics Center into an outputs-focused organization and refocused our efforts on mitigating supply chain vulnerabilities. Under industrial-based readiness, our depots at Corpus Christi, commanded by Colonel Gail Atkins, and at Letterkenny, commanded by Colonel Stephen Ledbetter, are excellent at producing quality secondary items and overhauling aviation and missile major end items. But the foundational purpose of a depot is to provide the capability to surge during periods of war. To improve their output to the field, we've begun reforming the depots by improving processes and realigning personnel and workload as needed to increase productive yield, reduce overtime, maintain the highest quality standards, improve the speed of delivery of parts, increase the accuracy of our forecasting, while always operating as safely as possible. To continue to improve, we will invest in modernizing our facilities and partnering with industry where it makes sense. There is no doubt we have to keep steady, relevant work in both our organic and commercial depots to maintain the skill levels of the artisan workforce, a workforce that cannot easily be replaced. We do have some agility to flex to meet emerging requirements, but we have more work to do in this area. Our ability to maintain surge capability while modernizing to meet future requirements will be critical elements to the success in multi-domain operations. Our core competencies are listed on the left side of this chart. These are the foundational capabilities we leverage every day to provide sustainment support to Army aviation. You'll see that only 5 of the capabilities are organic to AMCOM, with ACC and Army Futures Command owning the other 2, but we synchronize and integrate the outputs from all 7 to meet mission requirements. Just like to take a second to highlight a couple of these across the operational timeline to show you how we're preparing for the future. Support to acquisition. This audience, more than most, understands how important the acquisition process is to our success. Across the ready and modern force timelines, AMCOM is reforming how we manage and validate our requirements and how we engage with industry to drive accountability for outputs. I mentioned that we need to get better at contracting, not just the speed, but the accuracy of our contracts. Each contract being only as good as the requirements we've put in it. To get after this, we formed a new element within AMCOM and a new battle rhythm event dedicated to scrutinizing, validizing, and prioritizing all our requirements before we put a single dollar against them. Our new requirements integration directorate embedded within our G3, is responsible for owning this function and will track contractor and government performance, providing assessments to the commanding general to be used in recurring industry engagements to drive performance and hold people accountable. By taking ownership of our end of the process, we will ensure high-level oversight and a more streamlined process which will improve speed, accuracy, and quality of our end-to-end contracting. At the end of the day, however, we know that government contracting is symbiotic. The partnership works best when we work together and falters when we don't. Under field maintenance, many of you have enjoyed the benefit of AMCOM's more tactical level sustainment, the LARs you see in the maintenance space, or the contracting support provided via our field maintenance division. But we can do better, and we are reforming to drive improvements in field maintenance, improvements that will generate returns in terms of readiness. General Perna has directed us to evaluate and improve our field support by identifying and tracking LAR and contractor performance in 3 areas: assistance they provide, training they accomplish, and trends they identify. Based on the results of this assessment, we will reshape our LAR program to adjust position descriptions, realign personnel, improve LAR training, and develop appropriate metrics. Many of you may already be aware of the condition-based reset tool with an XORG just signed by DAG4. This tool and others, such as CBM Plus, are illustrative of the ways in which we will leverage big data to make informed sustainment decisions. Moving forward, we are going to invest in prognostic maintenance capabilities at the strategic and tactical levels to make sure we have the right capabilities forward to sustain our soldiers and systems at the velocity of war. And AMC and AMCOM are investing in additive manufacturing technologies across our footprint. While increased access to tech data is tied to our acquisition reforms, we are committed to creating the ability to manufacture every appropriate part we can with this new technology. And we will continue to focus on building partnership capacity via foreign military sales, training and support packages, ensuring our Army fights with ready allies. Ultimately, to meet multi-domain operational requirements, we are committed to improve our output to the Army through each of these 7 strategic support focus areas. But to do so, we must also reform our core competencies to adapt to multi-domain operating concepts and the expected expeditionary requirements of tomorrow. Slide, please. At AMCOM, we know ourselves, we know the environment, and we know the challenges now and in the future. We are fully nested with a vice and with General Perna's focus areas. And General Perna will absolutely measure the progress of our initiatives and hold us accountable to get the job done. Readiness is a team sport, and the men and women who serve AMCOM are committed to working with our soldiers, CABs, industry, defense agencies, and our allies to ensure that we keep this nation safe and free from harm. We are operating in a time of great uncertainty and unpredictability. Threats which we had not imagined a decade ago are very real right now. Whether it's turbulence in the Middle East, the Chinese ventures in the South China Sea, the Russians in Syria, or the actions of North Korea, our nation finds itself with potential threats around the globe. To ensure we can provide readiness to our soldiers wherever they may find themselves, we must have a healthy, modern, and viable industrial base, a secure, strong supply chain, and the ability to get the right parts and equipment to our soldiers when and where they need them. To meet these requirements, we will continue to invest in the proper technologies, equipment, and personnel now and in the future, but we must become more efficient and skilled in our contracting and sustainment practices to ensure that our Army and the Joint Force have the capability to surge in support of global contingencies in a timely and effective manner. It's AMCOM's mission to provide ready aviation and missile systems to our Army at the point of need. We are proud to have this mission. We work hard every day to support our soldiers. And for so many of you here who have given so much to our soldiers, I ask that you continue with those efforts and reflect on these words from President John F. Kennedy. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and success of liberty. I want to thank you and Quad A for allowing me the opportunity to be here with you today to discuss some of the many ways AMCOM supports Army aviation now and how we're going to proceed in the future. Army strong. Thank you.